Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar today. My name is Johanna. I'm from the UN Innovation Network, and we are running this webinar today in collaboration with ICAO, that's the International Civil Aviation Organization, and the colleagues are based in Montreal, Canada. I think I speak for all of us when I say that since the beginning of COVID-19, many of us attended so many webinars and so many more than we did before the pandemic started. And with all the restrictions on movement and travel, a lot of meetings and workshops that we would have previously done in person are now being done online. And I think since then, we've all learned a lot about different technology platforms and webinar techniques and etiquette. And we're slowly getting there and better at it. But if I had to guess, the phrase that I probably used most and heard the most in 2020 was, "You're on mute." So there's still a learning journey. And of course, this is only about the webinar, is the in-webinar etiquette, and it's not so much about the impact of webinars yet. And often what we want is for webinars to be some sort of a learning experience in which we introduce colleagues to new approaches, new ways of working, to ongoing projects, communicate some knowledge, and ideally get some action from that. And we all know that a good webinar can be as effective as a meeting, but with all of us constantly running from one webinar to another, it's really important to think about the long-term outcomes and what we want from a webinar and how to design it and what follow-up actions we might want to put in place to make sure that it meets its objectives. So I'm really excited that in our session today, we're going to learn from ICAO about their approach to hosting webinars, what they do with the data that are analyzed around webinars, and how they turn them into little micro training units based on the webinar content. It is super fun. I'm hoping to charm them into doing something like this with UNIN, so hopefully it works out. As always, we'll have presentations up front, around 25 minutes, and then we'll open up for Q&A. For that, we will use the Q&A box on your screen. It's at the bottom there. Please use the Q&A and not the chat. It makes it a lot easier for us to kind of keep track of questions. You can also click like on questions that other colleagues may have asked that you're also interested in and help us prioritize them. And because it tends to be the most common question, it's like, yes, we are recording the webinar and the content will be made available. And before I hand over to our presenters, I actually want to ask you a quick question. You know, we always like to do this to get you engaged at the beginning. So we would like to know what your experience with webinars is to date. I've never attended one. This is my first one. I had a bet with one of the presenters that there would be very few in that category. Let's see. Please don't prove me wrong on purpose. I attended some, I attended and organized some. I'll leave it open for a few more seconds. And then let's see if we get that one person who's joining for the very first time. Of course. I'm closing the poll now. Here you have the results. Of course, there was one person. So colleague Marco, who I'll introduce you to, was right. There's always one person who has never attended. But you see, the majority of you have attended and organized some webinars, so that's great. I think you'll be in for a good learning experience here. And we also, to give further background to our colleagues, would like to ask you this second question, and that is, what are you doing with the content and recording after the webinar? So once you've run, you can choose multiple here. So do you nothing? Do you edit it? Do you share it via mail, publish it, write an article, use it for other activities? Select multiple. If you have not actually hosted a webinar as the organizer, select it as what you would have experienced from a participant point of view. And this again, multiple choice, so feel free to click all that apply. We'll give you 5 more seconds. And that will be really interesting background for our presenters today. So I hope you can see it. 20% say very little. I share it via mail, 65%. 35% say publish on a website, that's great. Publish articles based on it and use it as other source for other activities. Fantastic. So also 40% of you are doing that. That's really good to know and very helpful background for our presenters of the day, who I'm very pleased to introduce you to. We are today joined by a full team from ICAO. We have Microlearnings, who's the Chief of the Implementation Support. We're joined by Dawn Flanagan. She's an Implementation Support Officer. And June is the Digital Learning Design and Development Officer, all of them, of course, with the Civil Aviation Organization. Thank you, colleagues, for joining us. You have kindly agreed to go on video, so looking forward to seeing you and learning from your experiences. And I believe, Marco, I'm handing over to you.
Yes, morning to everybody. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here with you today and talk to you a little bit about what we have been doing in ICAO over the last months. Yeah, maybe you go back on the slide before, June. Just give you a little bit of a background here. We can say that from February, March this year, from ICAO's point of view, we did not do any travel. We didn't go do any workshops in different countries, which we would normally do, which we call implementation support. So it's doing workshops, giving training, so we would normally travel in various countries. So that has now totally stopped. And then, we have become virtual. And so we have been organizing webinars, which we have learned like from zero. And Dawn will actually show you what we have learned, how to organize them. Then second, I will show you what we're actually using the Zoom for. Because Zoom has an API, meaning that Zoom provides the data on all the webinars and what happens. So we have analyzed this, and I will show you what insights we have gained from the data from the webinars. For example, currently I see that there are 82 attendees. So this number 82, it's actually something we would be able to track for all our webinars in the dashboard. So I will show you something like that. And then we also was thinking what we are doing with the recording. How can we use the webinar as a source for training? How can it become training on a longer run? Because one of the most common questions we got after our webinars is from the people, can I have a certificate? Now, if you're saying, can you have a certificate? It means that somehow we consider this as training, but training is then some specific activity where we have like a learning objective or some checking. So we're thinking, why we're not using it to make a little training out of it. So we call that a microlearning activity. And my colleague June, she's a specialist on this, and she will show you some examples of what we have done. So I will hand over to Dawn to give you an introduction of our webinars. Talk to you later.
I did the mute button. Sorry, Johanna. Thank you so much, Marco. Yes, thank you for that introduction as to where we stand. So as Marco said, probably about a month or so after we began our lockdown, we were brainstorming a bit as to how we were going to start interacting and engaging once again with the civil aviation authorities and aviation industry, since we were not traveling, we were not having those workshops, we were not doing our normal way of business. So we decided, let's start something new, especially for our organization, and we're going to start a webinar series. So for us, really, the intent behind this webinar series was to provide information quickly to civil aviation authorities, to our member states, to industry, and especially on how the community was being impacted by COVID-19. Since this is a continuing evolving situation, we know we needed to get messages out quickly. So we thought the webinar series was an opportunity to do that. But we also wanted to engage with the public as well. We thought this was an opportunity to provide also information to students, to training institutions, etc. So we began the webinar series looking at overall hierarching operational issues. So we were looking at operational safety measures, aviation medicine, which in particular, we were looking at public health corridors and how that was being developed for aviation, personnel licensing, airworthiness. These are all technical items that the states really needed to figure out what they were going to do in a lockdown environment, but how were we going to continue, how the industry was going to continue. June, next, please. So how did we set it up? As Johanna was saying, what they've done as well, we did something similar. We started it on a Zoom platform. as other UN agencies were doing. We wanted to ensure that it had the necessary security protocols in place. So we made sure that we did registration online. Everybody needed to have their own account. But we developed a dedicated webinar website off of our main page at ICAO. And from there, every topic that we did, we had individual pages. So we talked about when it is, you would register online, you would have a brief description about the event, who's your target audience, who are the speakers, and a bit of their bios. So all this was done online. We automated it through Zoom. And then after we ensured, we created a page basically for archiving all the recordings, because different time zones, what have you, not everyone's always able to attend at one time. Next slide, June. Thank you. So in regards to running webinars, so we learned everything from zero. It was all a lot of trial and error. And you know, as we've been going through this process, we've learned a lot. Some of the important things we knew for preparation as we were going through, I organized dry runs for each session before each webinar, because a lot of people weren't familiar, especially in the beginning, with how you use Zoom. They've never seen it, or they've only attended a meeting. They didn't attend a webinar. So there was different nuances that they needed to learn. Also, we were working with people not only within our own organization, but we were working with states and industry as well as speakers, So we needed to ensure that they knew what we were doing. Practice mode, very important. That's actually a bit of a lifesaver, especially in many instances, so everyone can test to make sure everything's working. We always have technical issues, so this is a way to work them out and ensure you have time in advance. Share Drive, so we put all of our stuff on Google Docs, and I work it from there. And develop a script. So as a moderator, as a facilitator, it's good to have a script and to share that with your speakers, especially if you have a large amount of speakers, and that's something I'll talk a little bit on next. So how we're executing them. Oftentimes presenters have links in their presentations, so we put them in chats so the participants can pull that out directly, and then they can look it up on their computer immediately. Backup questions. So sometimes the Q&A, it doesn't generate a lot of good topics, or sometimes the questions go off topic. So I oftentimes work with the speakers to develop some backup questions that build off of their presentations. So really, we also realize that the best timing is about an hour for a webinar, an hour and a half if you have several speakers, but once you go past that, you start to lose interest and lose focus. So that leads me to the next, that we really want to be succinct. We want to make sure we have a clear message, and that we are able to then provide enough time for Q&A to be able to really engage with the audience. And once again, we set it up just like Johanna has here, that it's through the Q&A button at the bottom. Reducing the number of speakers in the presentations. We've had a couple events where they were multi-hour and multi-speaker, and we really realized that these things need to be broken down into smaller events. Q&A period is very important. You want to make sure you've got enough time for that. And some of the feedback we've gotten from the surveys that we've done at the end of our webinars is that the high level, high overarching webinars are good information, but now we really need to start focusing on more technical items and working people through that. So that's a bit of a summary of how we've been doing our webinars. I want to turn it back over to Marco now to discuss the data issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. So you've seen that we have, we're trying to prepare and run the webinars as systematically as possible, because we're doing a lot of them, and we want the results to be usable for our microlearning activities. So the more standardized they are, the better questions we get, the more easier for us it is to generate a microlearning, which is a very straightforward activity then. Also, to get more insights in how the webinars are doing, we have been using the ZoomAPI. So here we're going into data. So my background initially is data. So I try to transform everything into data, including webinars. So with the ZoomAPI, you can actually access a whole bunch of information, like the list of participants, list of webinars, and they're all timestamped, registrations. And so we wrote a little Python program to connect to the APIs there and generate graphs for ourselves, but also then for reporting to our managers on more or less automatically. So next, please. This is like one graph where we asked ourselves, like, what would be our key indicators for webinars? You know, just like typically would count durations, the number of webinars, and the number of participants. So here you see all the webinars we have done since, as Don said, like February, no, maybe April, May. It goes actually from right to left, chronologically. So you see at the beginning on the right, we actually had no clue how many participants we would expect. We didn't know if it would be 50, 100, 200, 300. We're launching a webinar, we didn't know. Now we have kind of gained insight, and you see it stabilized around 150, 200. This is the blue line. It's the actual ones who show up. So the registrations is like the black point. So we also didn't know how many no-shows would we have. Do people massively register and then don't come? Or what would be the percentage of no-shows? And you, just by looking at it more or less, you can see that there seems to be more or less the same proportion all the time. And so we have found that out too. And there's also a notion of peak, because if you can have 100 participants, but if one participant just joins for 5 minutes and then leaves, and then another one comes and then leaves again after 5 minutes, so you have never everybody the same time there. So there's a notion of peak. So we have created this dashboard and this data just for us to know. So for example, there's one here, which was a total outstanding webinar we have done at the beginning of the year, that we had over 1,000 actual people. We had 1,600 registrations. It was really an outlier for us. And you see him on the right there, it's the 7th or 8th. So we try to understand also why is this one so high, whereas other ones is more like normal around the 200s. So by knowing that, you know, we try to dissecate a little bit. Next, please. This is then also for looking at the behaviors of the people when they register. See, before we thought, well, you know, a webinar is just like a conference. And we say, oh, well, we publish the conference and then we give the people like a deadline. You have to register by, I don't know, 2 days before or 3 days before. Well, we tried to do that at our first month, but we saw very fast, so that's not possible. So when you do webinars, there's no such thing as register before something. Here you see we have counted when people are registering, and this is in hours before the event. So you see that we have like constant like waves. We see, for example, people never register on Sundays. They always register during the week. So you have your webinar on Monday. It's actually a bad idea because people cannot register the day before. So we never organize webinars on Mondays, never. Only Tuesdays, from Tuesday on, never Monday. So we found out that the vast majority of people register in the last 24 hours, more or less. You know, so like 24, 48 hours before, that's where we have a regular push. So doesn't make sense to close it. So we actually keep registrations open all the time. People can register continuously. So that's something we have learned and we did not know at all. So it's using the data which we found out, and it's systematic for all our. So it's also decided then that we never do one on Monday, because 20 hours before, it's the weekend and people don't. Next, please. On one webinar now, we've tried to dissecate a little bit, you know, to be looking at, for example, duration. This is an example of a standard webinar, 60 minutes, 65 minutes. Participants, there were quite a lot here. Actual attendees 489, registered was 760. So we have like a no-show rate of 31%, which is mostly standard. So we have found out our webinars, 30 to 40% no-show is normal, okay? We were actually counting the number of countries. So because the people register, they tell where they are from. And we know that they are, for example, this one has covered more than 100 countries. a physical event for ICAO, which would have more than 100 different countries attending, impossible. I mean, this is so rare, it would be an assembly for us. Then we're also looking at the attendance, like how many minutes do the people attend out of the total. So in average here, you would see the people attended 55 minutes out of 65, which is actually very good. So 84% of the whole thing they attended. The graph shows when people join. So they join when they open or they join later. So we get 90% of our people, 90% of the attendees generally after 12 to 15 minutes. Also, we did not know about that. So that means that the first 12 or 15 minutes, traditionally, we would not put in too much specific content because we know people are still joining, which is the same here now. So I said at the beginning we had 80 and something. Now we have 93 attendees. So this is pretty typical. So we tell our presenters the first 12 minutes we do a poll and things like this to get people on board. And then there's this notion of dropout at the end, where people start leaving, and ideally you don't want people to leave before the end, right? So we have drawn this line of 90% of the people where they are, and then see where to monitor when they drop out. So this is actually an example of what I would consider a good webinar. The attendance span, 84% is good. The no-show rate is acceptable, and we have quite a lot of countries. Next, please. So this is like a comparison of, so we have these graphs for all our webinars. It's automatically generated by our Python code. So these are sort of small examples, you see. One on the top left, you see the people joined very slowly. It took like almost 30 minutes for having 90% of the people. So there was like that was not very good. Okay, so and it's not very good because of some reasons, maybe of the days, of the topics, and yeah. On the top right, you see one where we had reached a peak, and then there was a drop of people leaving after a certain time. And when you see more or less when they start leaving, it's after 60, 70 minutes. That also showed for us that 60, 70 minutes, 60, 70 minutes, it's like the absolute maximum. After that, we will have a drop of people. On the bottom left, you would see some which are, we don't reach 90% of attendees. It means that people are coming and leaving and coming and leaving. And the bottom right, what it would say again is one which is pretty good. That's our top scorer, the 1,076 attendees there. And this one is actually really a perfect one. People are coming after 15 minutes and they were staying almost at the end. Very, very nice. So this is about the data, and I will hand over to June now for the microlearning part.
Hello, everybody. I would like to just talk about before we talk about microlearning, I would like to talk about the current trend in online learnings. So every year we are seeing, change of trend in almost every sectors, especially in online training, e-learning. You may already heard about, virtual reality, how we can apply virtual reality or artificial intelligence or mixed reality, even like hologram. Probably you may have heard about it, but there are lots of online learning trends nowadays. But I like to present 4 factors, main factors. Nowadays, people, they are talking a lot, and popular online learning trend. So first things are probably already know, the social learning. So social learning suggests that new behavior can be obtained by observing or imitating others. So people can learn each other using observation or imitation or modeling. So, you mean using Facebook or LinkedIn, etc., other social platform, we can learn each other's. And second trend I would like to talk about is adaptive learning. So adaptive learning, we can call personalized or customized, or maybe we can call also flexible learning. So people can learn without worrying about device or where you are located or what time. So there is no time constraint. So it gives us flexibility or freedom to learn at their pace. And also we give us a like customized learning experience and journey. And today, especially like microlearning, it's our main topic. So what probably you may heard about what is microlearning. It's microlearning is kind of learning that delivers information in small and highly focused chunk piece learning element. So it is one of the best way to find the quick answer to specific problem. So just the next slide, I'm gonna. Okay. So what is characteristic in microlearning online courses? So characteristic is the there is a characteristic only focus on a topic, only one topic or very narrowed topics. And each module can provide a very focused answer to the question or topic and narrow topic. And also microlearning can combine small learning unit to become a part of a training program, a whole program, even or can be standalone. Microlearning content types also, we can use like video tutorial, audio, or animations, or games, or scenario, or mini quizzes and flashcard, everything. We can use it, any multimedia elements. And it should be mobile friendly because the microlearning concept, it's everywhere, every time you can learn it. So any device should be supported, like a tablet, smartphone. So what's the benefit of using like microlearning method? So microlearning course is very much cheaper to produce. Also less time consuming because it's a small chunk of size learning. So also for in the learner's view, it's very easy to memorize the concept because it's very small sized chunk of it information we provide through the microlearning. So people can learn also anytime, everywhere. And also there's no, like people, they can even learn in train during the travel, they can learn in metro or in subway, in train, everywhere. And here, so next, here. Okay, so I would like to talk about, so okay, what is the microlearning course in ICAO? So what kind of learning types we used? There are a bunch of learning types we can use it, but however, there are so many learning types. So we selected a few elements from microlearning types. So we used, as Marco, he presented it, we used recorded webinar to make a microlearning. So we used usually the recorded webinar, it's 1 hour, it's a long hour video. So we chopped it in the small piece, like 2-3 minute video, and make interactive video. So while you are watching the video, the quizzes pop up. So while you are watching, and you can do there are some interaction moment, people, they can do it. And also we inserted through the learning module, we inserted the mini quizzes, like 2-3 quizzes every time, every unit. And also there's the reading material at ICAO. We have annexes and the document. And those things we sometimes provide it. But usually this annex and document, it contains sometimes 200 pages, like 300 pages, 100 pages. And people have to find the right information, in 200 pages. So what we did for this microlearning, we extracted a few pages, like 10 pages or 12 pages only, and we made interactive ebook. Probably we'll show you example of interactive ebook soon. But also the last things we used is learning, of course, LMS, learning management system. Although microlearning module hosted on our LMS, so people, once they log in, they do a lesson. But once they pass the final exam, they get certificate. So that is here. So the Marco, he presented, so far ICAO, we did conducted 57 webinars so far. So among 57 webinars, we choose the 3 webinar, which is we believe that it's very relevant during this COVID-19 challenging time. So there are 3 micro-learning courses so far we developed it. So it's a repurposing. The first one is a repurposing aircraft passenger cabin for transport of cargo. Second, it's a digital transformation in aviation. And third, it's a public health corridor. Those 3 micro-learning, it's available on ICAO now. So I show a small video. So probably you can get some idea what is a key competency program to our micro-learning courses.
ICAO's online Key Competencies program provides a timely and pertinent series of self-paced online courses which support the development of key competencies and an awareness of best practices for dealing with the significant challenges faced by the civil aviation industry arising from global crises and pandemics such as the COVID-19 outbreak. Each KCP course targets comprehensive and up-to-date best practices and strategies to help mitigate the negative impact of pandemic outbreaks on specific sectors of the civil aviation community. ICAO's online learning platform combines the power of wired technologies and the latest in online learning design to provide a range of active and dynamic learning experiences that meet the learning and scheduling needs of the 21st century. Active learning methods such as short videos and animations, case studies, and interactive ebook content provide a dynamic and engaging learning context. Interactive quizzes are integrated into the course design to help review and reinforce learning throughout each course. The ICAO online experience provides a self-paced curriculum that you can access from anywhere in the world at any time of the day or night, giving you total freedom over your learning goals and timeline. On the successful completion of each course and evaluation, each participant will earn an ICAO e-learning certificate of completion. When you register for courses within the ICAO Key Competencies program, you're investing in the new future of the civil aviation industry.
Okay, so next, so I would like to show one of the example. It's a micro-learning courses, a digital transformation in aviation. So I show how it looks like our actual micro-learning course. Here. Okay, here. So yes, so if you can see my screen, this is courses. It's a digital transformation in aviation courses. So when you come, this is our LMS. So people, they log in first, and there is a free survey we are doing. So we gather some information, demographic information, where you come from, what kind of a background you are. So we get this kind of information first, and people, they click a digital transformation in aviation. There is, if you can see here in the score, so some have passed the final exam. It shows, here on the top, on the bottom, and under here, and people, they can get the certificate. So when you click, the certificate downloaded. So if you can click here. So that's the course introduction. So it's a piece to piece. If you can see a screen, it's a course introduction, a biography of the presenters, the subject matter expert. So here, Unit 1, I just show Unit 1. So Unit 1 is talking about Web 4.0 in aviations. So Marco was in the video recorded webinar, he presented what is the Web 4.0 in aviation industry. So from here, here is a unit object comes up, and what is a 4.0? So here is, can you see this video here? So it's like 2 minutes.
I'm using this.
It's like 1 minute, 2 minute video. We chopped it. So he talked about what is the Web 4.0, and after that, it shows. Then okay, Web 4.0, and how about Web 3, Web 2, Web 1.0? So there is like interactivity. People, they know about, okay, what is the Web 2.0, what Web 3.0 here. And the next here, we have like some kind of information. It's, if you can see, every is chopped it. So this one is available in the multiple device, and the mobile device, any device. So people, they can explore each element in microlearning. This is one piece, is microlearning. So here, and there are like here, multiple knowledge checks comes up here. So people, they can, okay, then social web. What is for 4.0 known as syntactic symbiotic webs here. Then if it's right and it shows correct, and there's feedback show us up. This is the one of example of digital transparent aviation. And that next one, just here. So next, this is the micro example interactive ebook. So this one is we made, like using the PDF, we made an interactive ebook, and the people, they can do a search or print. Also, they can make a note, and there on the left side, there are the comprehension exercise. So people, they when they click comprehension exercise, they can do, there are multiple choice questions. So people, they can answer, they can check their feedback. That's here. So the last one is the challenging in microlearning. So challenging is, microlearning cannot solve every learning problem. Microlearning unit is very good for delivering a series of simple information, but not for necessarily the best option for complex material or long-term knowledges. It's still possible, but it really requires more effort and time if you want to go into complex material training. So for example, you need to break down to concept into a small piece and simple part. So but imagine like if you are trying to build like a geography or Canadian history in microlearning, and it'd be very hard. So you have to focus on one topic, or otherwise you have to make a series of microlearning, those things. So that's it. But still, there is microlearning. There are still challenges, but it's very good for the short-term learning, and it's very cost-effective, and it's less time-consuming. So it's very good for in the business sectors or organization. If you need like something quick learning, this is microlearning is one of the good options, I could say. So yes, would you like to get back to Dan? Dan, can you? Yeah.
Yeah, June. Thanks for this. So that kind of concludes our presentation. So I just put something in the chat there, just to saying that what June showed is it's actually generated by her and her team, and it's based on a webinar which I delivered. So I just delivered my webinar. I didn't write any questions, nor any text. So June and her team just took the content from what I said during the webinar, from the recording. And if I said, something, what's the most important, or I say, for example, the most important aspect of learning is knowledge gained, well then she would just put in a quiz based on that, what I just said. So it's a very simple way of doing. So for us there, what's next is definitely we want to push this forward. We are trying to generate for every webinar, we were trying to generate a microlearning course attached to it, at least one. And then we also try to have workshops to webinars. Workshop is then more like a hands-on thing, where we interact. Just like here, this is a webinar. There are almost 100 people. We cannot give an exercise to do to the people. So if we do a workshop, it's smaller, maybe 15 people, but then we would need something like a whiteboard. So we also do like this kind of things. So we want to do more of that. Let's say more technical focus. It's if we want to have an attendance and we want to have a real microlearning courses to be specific on a specific subject. And we said that too. So we're trying to find those subjects, and we are constantly reaching out to our experts, asking them, okay, please come and do a webinar with us on your topic, you know. And almost everybody in my organization has done a webinar now, you know, and we're really happy about that. So also the notion of boot camps is then important. We think that scaling things down. So now the webinar is an hour, so we make a small micro-learning, which is 2 hours. 2-hour micro-learning compared to a normal training, which would be a few days. So we have a micro-learning, which is 2 hours, and we think we can even boil it further down to what we would say boot camps, which would be maybe 10 minutes learning things, or even 5 minutes, closer to a video. But not only a video and a quiz, you know, so that we attach the learning component in terms of quiz always to it. So if you have projects in your organization, when you want to go that path, I know this is complicated and we have done quite a lot there. So we are happy to help you set that up, or maybe meet with your team and explain you more details. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. So that was on our side. I give back the floor to Johanna.
Thank you so much to all of you. That was really insightful. Enjoyed the presentation. I learned a lot. And thank you also in advance for having given me access to one of your micro-learnings. So I have actually done the digital transformation in aviation. And if you think it sounded good when the colleagues were presenting it, it is just as good when you're taking it. I really felt I learned something there. So thank you very much. I'd like to invite all three of you to come back on video as we go through a couple of the questions that all of you are sharing. There's a bunch coming in here. So I'm just going to pick them according to how popular they were. Please feel free to vote on other people's questions. It really does help. And the most prominent question we have received is about the learning management system that you're using and why you chose it. And related to that, also several questions around the program that you're using for the interactive ebooks and why you've chosen those. So can we dive a little bit deeper into the technical elements of the platforms, please?
Oh yes, LMS, you know, if you search LMS on the Google, there are like top 20 LMS. So you're gonna see, you know, Moodles, Blackboard, MyCourses, Brightspace, Absorb, ZoomAPI. They're gonna find a bunch of top 10 LMS, blah, blah, blah. But when you choose the LMS or something, there are features you require. Because nowadays, our LMS is not only self-paced online course. You have to nowadays think of a virtual classroom since, you know, COVID-19. So those are all the features you list out. And also the one of we cannot ignore things. One of the things we cannot ignore is the price. So usually LMS, they charge the user fee per person. So if you don't have enough budget for in LMS, that will be, then you have to, you know, look other LMS than like major LMS. But however, also if you have to think about in your organization, if you have like a resource, human resource, who can manage the LMS. For example, if you have a lot of IT people, maybe you can try like Blackboard or Major or Moodle, even Moodle, because Moodle is open source, so you can customize your LMS. But however, you don't have any this kind of a resource in your organization. You have to think about, okay, then we don't have this kind of technical background. We're gonna just subscribe the LMS, and then we can do. Then we're gonna host all the online courses. And the interactive ebook or online course microlearning, what kind of a tool we used? We used 4 or 5 online tools. We didn't use only one, but for example, interactive ebook, when you make it, you have to think about, there are a lot of, if you search it, there are a lot of interactive ebook tools you can find it, but you have to think about, because you're gonna host the interactive ebook on LMS. You have to find like scan compiling or those kind of available tools. So when you search it, we use the things like scan compiling, interactive ebook. We are not promoting this application, but we are using currently Kotobi, the interactive ebook, to make it. And also we are using the articulator, right? You probably, if you are a course developer or e-learning working in e-learning industry, you may already heard about like Adobe Captivate or iSpring or other articulate storyline. But the beauty of using the articulate right, because it's as you say, as you heard, it's microlearning. We have only 2-3 weeks to make the online course, 2-3 hours with a very minimum budget. So RISE, in case there is already interface is very user friendly, and there are a lot of blocks template you can use it. So it's very less time consuming and less it's more cost effective. Yes. Yes, Joanna, is it?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much, June. Much appreciated. We have a lot more questions coming in. And I think maybe the next one, Marco, for you on the types of data that you're collecting. And a colleague here is saying there's such a thing as paying attention data. So I think it is related to the behavior of colleagues in the webinar itself. Have you ever used those and analyzed them? And if so, what were the experiences?
Yeah, I replied to that one, but we have seen that there's Zoom generates like reports more or less automatically. So where Zoom comes with some interpretation of theirs, and we have found that well, even going back to the attendees, like the basic numbers, you know, knowing how many people were actually in your webinar, even that number. We found that, you know, there was sometimes Zoom has some kind of interpretation which we would not necessarily agree. So we wanted to have our own interpretation, especially with complex indicators, you know, like the indicators on paying attention. So what do you mean by paying attention? So I need to know that if I give back to to my managers or even for my decision making, I need to know what is it exactly. So these complex indicators, we generally stay away from them. So the notion of attendance, the one I have defined in my slides. So then the time you're actually attending the webinar, that's already like one indicator for us. But paying attention, I wouldn't go there because it's the webinar is like watching TV for me. You know, if you want to have some value on it, you need to bring it to the microlearning level. It's at that level where you would have like quizzes where you can actually control if someone has understood what you said, if that's what you want to monitor. If you want to monitor if the person has understood or the people understand, the only way is to transform it into microlearning and get it there.
Thank you, Marco. And a very nice segue to a question that I believe might be for June. It's already been cleared of the box, but there were a lot of colleagues interested in knowing how long it takes to develop a microlearning from a webinar. June, do you have any insights in that?
Yes. So, you know, it's up to your organization need. For us, you know, these 3 webinar for 3 webinar, we had a very timely manner, a very time limited development issues. So to make this online microlearning, in average, it took us two weeks, 2 weeks or 4 weeks. So it's operating on 1 month to develop the courses. So yeah, is that the answer? Is
yes, 1
yes,
month.
1 month, yes.
Right, thank you. And do you have any insights on the effectiveness of the learnings? So how are they received? Do colleagues appreciate them? Have you had any comments around the effectiveness in terms of how much they're able to retain over time?
Mm-hmm. So yes, so you know, those, you know, to how people they perceive these online courses, microlearning. Every online course we have a course evaluation linked to the people who completed the courses. So we analyze our course evaluation and people's to make it effective. So most of the people, we are talking about adult learnings. We are not talking about child or teenagers learning. Most of people, they are working full times. So they need learning, but they need to learning on their own pace and own times. So it's a self-paced learning. It's a very small chunk piece. So they can learn anytime. For example, let's say Unit 1 today you can learn, but like tomorrow or two weeks later you can do Unit 2. So you need to like provide like a flexibility, and also the multiple the learning should be supported on multiple device, so people they can learn in anywhere, anytime. And also you have to think about the to get the certificate. We can just not issuing certificate everybody. People they learn. After that, we request the final exam. So those final exam covers like usually gives like 15 and 20 multiple choices, and they pass. And then 80%, you usually give 3 attempts. So they can learn from the mistake, from the errors, and once they pass the exam, they get the certificate. So how we can, people to effective? It's most of the time when you talk about self-paced, it's motivations. So it's very different from in class. In class, you have a lot of interactions between like face-to-face and you can talk. But if we talk about self-paced learning, you are alone. You are, of course, people need the motivation. And so how you can make like motivation, probably you can think about some kind of element. For example, the digital aviation, digital transformation in aviation, what we did, we between the unit, we added the survey. So we ask you a question survey. What's your opinion, for example, blockchains in aviation? What kind of element can be done in a blockchain? So we ask, and so people they can type and they can share ideas. So it's very important for self-paced. It's motivation, engagement, and the interactions.
Thank you, Jane. Very, very helpful. And in that, I believe you've also answered a question from Peter, who was asking if you're giving certificates to colleagues attending webinars, and the answer was no, certificates are for attending microlearnings only, so not for attending the actual webinar. I have a lot of questions related to getting the data from Zoom. What is an API, first of all? Apologies for using acronyms here. So if we could just in one sentence maybe explain that. And then Marco, how do you get them? And do you have some sort of a training module on how colleagues can do this?
Yeah, so it's here we're going to the data thing. So it's I would suggest you if you're not familiar with APIs, then you would probably not be able to use that data like that. So it's a programming interface. It's like a web address you would call with some credentials, and it would give you back a data in format of JSON. So the JSON you need to absorb it with Python. So we are here in the data world. So I don't know. This is not this webinar is not about data. I think maybe we can make a webinar on data one day. But this is if you have data specialists in your organization, they know what's an API. I would suggest you talk to them and tell them if they could help you get some insights in your data. And using API, if they have data people with you, they will know how to use that. You can actually Google ZoomAPI and you will see there's a website, and it's very comprehensive.
Okay, so Google is the first port of call as often. A question from Kat from DCO in New York, and she's saying, can you elaborate a little bit more on gamification social learning and how you're using that in your trainings? Another favorite sentence, June, you're on mute.
I'm muted, yes. So the question is about, I think, how ICAO we are using the social learning or gamification. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. So yeah. So for example, in our LMS, we have like a kind of a board, like comment area. So people they can ask questions, and when we see this question, and subject matter expert they can answer these questions. And also social learning, we haven't used like a Facebook actively like these things, but however, like we are using like Google Forms to survey, and those are like a board and people they can share. So, but one of the things, one of like weakness in ICAO, we exploited, but we have not in major mode. But we have a plan to more have social platforms using the game. We have already gamification, but we don't have like we did not explore that many aspects of social learnings. Due to
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kind of leaving it open in case someone wants to add, but I see happy with the answer. I have a question here. I believe it's from our colleague Christina Goodness in New York with DPO, and she's wondering, how do you judge the effectiveness of the learning, especially over time? Any thoughts on that?
So this is how we can effective it. So that is we using the data. So which from course evaluations. So course evaluation, there are 20 questions we are asking, and we analyzing this each people they answered, and also we analyze how many registration, and every month we check how many people completed it, how many people failed the exam, how many people all succeed. And we also check the comment and the course evaluation. Then, okay, this is like now, okay, let's say if you like 20% of people, let's say 50% of people fail the exam, it's not the effective learning. It's the ratio, usually we expecting it's like something 10-20% of people failing and 80 and 90% that succeed when they complete the course and they pass the exam. That's we see that as an effective learning result.
So it's again looking at the data to inform answers.
So looking at the data, so the register number and how many completed and how many how they evaluate our courses. So we are using the several factors to get the this effective learnings result.
Thanks for sharing, June. And as we have learned from your webinar that people are going to start dropping off, I want to take a question from Shiori, I believe from the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. And they're wondering, do you have any learnings on outreach? Saying there's a lot of webinars, how can you encourage people to actually attend? We've seen attendance spikes in the last 24 hours. What do you do to promote your sessions?
So we've been doing various ways to promote, especially in the very beginning, because it was completely new for us. We were working with our training colleagues that had basically a mailing list of all the different organizations that they worked with for training. So we initially used that to do some promotions. But actually from then it's kind of skyrocketed, and we have on each of the web pages for each webinar at the bottom, there's an ability to be able to share it on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. And that's something that we've been doing and promoting through our speakers, especially with speakers that are outside of the organization. So they've been posting it on LinkedIn and also on Facebook, and it's really kind of generated interest that way. Also, like I just had a webinar with IATA and IFALPA. They also then took our the link to our webinar that they were working with us on, and they promoted it through their mailing lists. So really, it was it's just any way you can to promote. But now I think we've kind of also built up an audience who comes back routinely, because we have been running them once to twice a week, if not even more. So.
Fantastic, and clearly people are enjoying them and coming back. That is very helpful, and I really like the integration onto LinkedIn. You know, chances are they are operating in networks that will also be interested in similar content. So very smart, I like it a lot. We are at the hour, and we have learned we shouldn't run over time. I want to respond, maybe Dawn, that is the last question for you. The Zoom practice mode, it is such a fantastic feature. I feel we shouldn't go without just telling people about it. Do you want to take that last question? And really is worth listening to the answer. It will make your webinar experience so much better going forward.
Sure, thanks so much, Johanna. Yes, this is actually something that we accidentally found when we were working on this. And it's something that you need to, it's a box that you tick when you're developing your webinar template. And what it does is it allows you to invite panelists or your speakers on in advance before you go live. which is fantastic. So it allows you to go on maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes in advance with your speakers. You can chat, you can ensure everybody's video is working, you can test out your PowerPoints, your video, your audio, make sure everybody is familiar with how the webinar, the sequence of events and everything. So really it's your green room that you would have for you know, in Hollywood or whatever, but it's for us to really make sure that we're up and ready to go. And so when we go live, everything is ready. So yes, it's definitely been a savior, especially if you have multiple panelists involved.
Absolutely agree, and never run a session without any practice mode, so I can highly recommend it.
Agreed.
And with that, before I say thank you to you, I think there's a bunch of questions that we didn't get to, and I'm guessing colleagues that would like to follow up with you. We will make the content available, as we've learned good practices here, so it'll be on our website, will be shared via email. And if it's okay with you, we'd also like to share your contact details with colleagues so they can follow up directly with you. I see nodding, so I'm guessing that's okay. Thank you very much. In that case, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic session. I feel I've learned a lot. As you know, Yunan is running a lot of webinars, so I thought I was getting there, but I really have learned a lot. And I hope I speak not just for myself, but for everyone who joined the session. So really thank you for sharing your learnings with us, and we look forward to incorporating them.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone, and we'll be sharing the recording and the slides with everyone who's attended via email. So thank you for today, and looking forward to seeing you in a future session. And again, best wishes to ICAO in Montreal. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.